Good afternoon. Let's get started. Now, former Deputy Works and Housing Minister Samson Ehi has criticized government for failing to release funds for the dredging of major drains in the country. He says government must take a huge chunk of the blame for the havoc caused by the floods on Monday. Now, he wants Parliament to summon both the Finance and Works and Housing Ministry to brief the House on their preparation towards 2 weeks of rain as predicted by the Meteorological Agency.
I think what as a country we have been doing is every year we desilt the major gutters in Accra, in Tema. But I know for a fact that Ministry of Works and Housing has written to Ministry of Finance for flood control monies to be released to them. But as we speak, not a cedi has been given to the ministry. So the ministry is handicapped as we speak. And so we all know that we have no control over the rains that we have been warned that it will come, because that is nature. But we have control over how to direct the flow of the rains. But government has refused to do the right thing. And that is why we are seeing all this flooding immediately after it rains. And so I think we should blame the government to some extent. The government is blamable.
You mean the finance ministry?
And that's the government.
Yeah,
I'm
of course.
talking about the government
but they failed to.
Because they are not helping the Ministry of Works and Housing to do what they are supposed to do. And that's a fact. They have not released their funding, their budget allocation to them. And so they cannot do anything. So the gutters have not been desilted. Our drainage system are choked. That is why we are experiencing what we saw yesterday after the rains.
And you think that the monies will do any better?
If they have released some monies to Works and Housing to undertake the certain measures, at least, even though it may flood, but not to that magnitude. Because, if the gutters are choked and it rains, for the running water, it will run. And so, in course of the running, when its ways is blocked, it will divert.
Will Parliament consider summoning the Finance Minister to the House to answer questions on some of the concerns he raised?
Yeah, I think the Works and Housing Committee should look at that, and so to also find out from the Works and Housing Minister and the Finance Minister the preparations so far towards the pending rains that we have been forewarned.
Thank you, sir.
Meanwhile, the Ghana Meteorological Agency says the rainfall recorded is normal and on time, contrary to suggestions that they are unexpected. Felicity Ahafianyo spoke to Israel Lai on Prime just yesterday.
We have two rainy seasons.
Right.
We have one that starts in March and ends in somewhere around July, and at times enters into August.
But the peak is June.
It's June, yes. Then we have the second phase that starts in mid-September through October to early part of November. At times it extends into the early part of December.
Right.
That's for southern sector. Now the northern sector, they have only one rainy season. It starts between April, May, all the way to October, and they too at times either it ends third week in October or first or second week in November.
Okay.
So now if the major rainy season is not too good, as the start of the rainy season over the country for each year is not good, the minor comes to compensate it. We have human activities that are contributing to all the floods that we are seeing.
But the rains we experience in October is more of the major season now.
Yeah, it's more of the major season.
It's looking like
the major season, the June type of weather over the southern sector.
It means we should expect more rain.
I will not say yes, because we are exiting gradually from the rainy season. This week we are anticipating the rains up to the weekend, but then the following week the intensity, the frequency will reduce.
Now, floods in Kumasi have rendered roads near airport roundabout impassable for commuters and vehicle owners. On Monday evening, homes were also submerged after the heavy downpour in the city. Residents and passengers blamed city authorities for poor planning, which they say caused the Ghanaians to bear the brunt. Mohammed Nuruddin put in this report about it.
Hours of rainfall in the Ashanti regional capital, Kumasi, left many people stranded. Passengers had to wait for hours for the floods to recede before they could continue their journeys. Some of them who were tired of waiting had to hang on long trucks and other vehicles to cross the deadly floods. Others who had no option chose to wait.
Within short time, so going to obey 1 hour cross, and the BSC, you know, there's a young grow cry. You catch that by a 960 baby is so and so far, Monday, Simona, or some we sat down in a floor on your side entire bridge way to Mosizongo Bridge, you know, or Moshana, Moniana, Mount one Jay, I won't try by as we start saying, and no, and yet net free and President Kufuor time. Ever Pimo and net. Say, hey, young fine. And penny for Cromma, what's so down here? Near about cross what I say. Now, she's share with you, near Jessica, near Mount Mercy, and shelter your baby. Yes, give me up, but they don't have 2.5 hours. You move into I didn't tell us about that.
The airport area often gets flooded when it rains, and motorists have been cautioned to drive with care.
3 hours. I can't swear that. Yama, and Mamma Munidi. A quite idea here, Papa. Any pantomime, ma. It's your charges out that would dance. Why, I more than 1 hour.
The Ghana Meteorological Agency earlier on Monday morning warned thunderstorms and rains across the country. The middle sector was expected to record thunderstorms and rains with 70% chances in the Ashanti regional capital, Kumasi. Mohammed Nuruddin's reports for JoyNews.
Now, security analyst Adam Bona is blaming a lack of comprehensive defense and security policy as having left the sector at a high risk of being corrupted. His assertion follows a study by Transparency International which reveals the defense and security sectors in Ghana are at very high risk of corruption. Now, the study mentioned the lack of governmental engagement and information sharing as some of the reasons for corruption in some of these institutions. Now, Adam Bona spoke earlier on News Desk via Skype.
There's a missing puzzle which has to do with the defense and security policy. We don't have a comprehensive one. What we have has to do with a disjointed one. So then it makes room for surveys like this to come out and be able to say, well, we are at high risks of being, getting the sector corrupted. And so, for instance, I have the survey document with me where the country, our overall score was actually E. And E, if you ask me, I would say is a fail. We didn't do well. If you come to operational risks, in fact, within the sector, operational risks, we failed. We had an F. When they conducted a survey, and the survey, as published. And so these are some of the things that if you ask me, I would say I'm not surprised at all, because then what it takes for us to lower the risks of corruption has not been put in place. We are told that, don't put security out there. But we all know that either the multimedia or the EIBs or the rest would usually leak a lot of this information, including the military pact between the Republic of Ghana and the US, and then when they have to do with even the Emil Short recommendations, some of it got published before the white paper. So as far as I'm concerned, they leadership might not be, probably have not attempted to hide it, but there is that thing that don't put issues that has to do with security out there. And so for me, maybe we have to learn lessons from this. The score E isn't good as a nation. And what it means is that if you look out on the chart, we very high rates of being corrupt when it comes to purchases within, the security and the defense sector.
Now, the coalition of non-governmental organizations against child trafficking is pointing to political and community interference and delayed prosecutions as some of the impediments in the fight against enslavement of children. In an interview with JoyNews' Executive Director of International Needs, Cromwell Awade, said calls to free perpetrators by persons who wield influence derail the efforts by civil society organizations and law enforcement agencies. The concern came on the heels of a 5-year jail term handed to persons in the Eastern region for engaging in the hazardous use of children on Lake Volta. The Deputy Eastern Regional Police PRO is available to speak to this rescue mission and the subsequent prosecution of the perpetrators in the Eastern region. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you. I'll have to apologize. I didn't catch your name there. Your superintendent?
No, I am Sergeant Francis Gomado.
Sergeant Gomado.
The Deputy PRO for Eastern region.
Thank you for speaking to us. Now, how endemic is the challenge identified by the coalition of NGOs against child trafficking? How regularly do you get phone calls from people in authority asking you to not take action against suspects in child enslavement cases?
The calls will definitely come because people have their own interest. But the fact is, we are the law enforcement officers, and you have to go out to enforce the law. So, as a matter of fact, that's what exactly we are doing.
Right, but it is an impediment when you get these phone calls, is it not?
Pardon?
It is an impediment when you get these phone calls, is it not?
Yeah, it's an impediment, but the fact is that if you know what you are doing, and you know what you are doing is legal, and you're on top of your job, no matter how the call, you still go ahead to do your work.
Do the police ever say no to these calls?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course.
More often than not, or is it more usually the case that you end up letting people go because influential people call?
No, in my earlier submission somewhere, I said no amount of name calling, intimidation can stop us from doing our work, especially this issue of trafficking.
Are you telling us today that no phone calls to ask the police to cease action in any of these cases has ever been heeded? The police never heed these phone calls. Is that what you're saying?
So far as I am concerned, and so far as the region that I speak for is concerned, it's no.
Then it's not an impediment.
Yes, it's an impediment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
well, tell us then, what are the reasons accounting for delayed prosecutions, for instance?
Sometimes the jurisdiction, like before you get a suspect arrested, you have to move them to the nearest, court. You understand? For prosecution to start. Sometimes the distance also is an impediment. Sometimes the processes that you go through, you understand, it's also an impediment.
What sort of processes delay the prosecution?
No, we have some reforms in the system now. The issue of full disclosure, when you have to furnish even the suspect, the accused person, and probably his counsel, if he's having one, all the details about what you have against them. You understand? All these are processes that sometimes, but these are processes that are common to all court cases. No, previously those systems were not in place, but now we have new reforms. And we need to comply with those reforms as a matter of fact. That's correct. So, that is the part of the process of prosecution. It's not a delay to the process. It's part of the process. I'm asking you about what delays it. What causes sometimes a case to be held off for months, years,
without any progress?
Yes, you know, sometimes too, we are fortunate in the eastern region here. We work in hand with the AG's office. So immediately we put our docket before them for advice. They work on it, as a matter of urgency. But unlike somebody who is maybe far from the regional capital, where the AG is, definitely you have some hiccups.
Like what? What sort of hiccups?
You have to transfer. You have to move all the way. Assuming somebody is at a front place, right, and is investigating a similar case of child trafficking, you have to move all the way from that place and submit the docket to AG's office in Koforidua. Go back if the advice is ready, you come for it and all that. But with those who are in the regional capital or the regional command, I think we don't have that challenge.
So yeah. What is being done to address this this challenge?
No, with time, you know, previously it was not even like this. This time things have improved, and we pray that things will get better as a matter of fact. What
accounts for the improvement? Surely it's not prayer. So how have we achieved this improvement, and how can we get more?
Yeah, no, one of the improvements that has accounted for this, or is that, you know, if such issues happen, sometimes instead of leaving it for the district or the division to handle, the regional commands take over those investigations. You understand? And speed up the process.
Okay.
And it's a move in the right direction.
I want to thank you for your time. Sergeant Francis Gomado is Deputy Police PRO for the region. All right then. Now, the Attorney General was scheduled to appear before the House and brief them on the status of investigations involving the former GFA President Kwesi Nyantakyi. But a letter has been sent to the clerk's office indicating she is bereaved, reason for her absence. Kwesi Parker Wilson joins me with more. Kwesi, tell me, what more happened on the floor today regarding this matter?
Okay, so the Attorney General, Madam Gloria Kufu, was expected to appear before the House today and answer questions specifically regarding the investigations into the conduct of the former GFA boss, Kwesi Nyantakyi. And you remember that there were some specific allegations against the president, which he filed a complaint with the CID and the started the investigation. Some members of parliament say they want to know the outcome of that investigation because it's very important for the president and, of course, the presidency because of the allegations made by Kwesi Nyantakyi when he used the president and the vice president name to lure some investors. But interestingly, the deputy majority whip, that is Honorable Matthew Yendam, when he addressed the House, indicated that the minister has been bereaved and that she wouldn't be able to appear before the House and give an answer to the question that has been asked, and that there has been an official correspondence between the ministry and that of the clerk's office. So the minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, said that it's true that they have received a copy of a letter indicating that the minister would not be on the floor of the House. So they are okay, they are wishing her well, they are hoping that when she goes through the process, when she's done with the whole buyer process, then she will return to the House to answer the question that the MPs asked. But away from that, the Fisheries Minister today appeared on the floor of the House with her deputy and the Chief Director. And could you remember that last week, the Speaker of Parliament was egged by the minister's inability to appear before the House to answer questions that some MPs were asking, and that today, when she came, she rendered an unqualified apology and said that Parliament is a serious House and that it wasn't deliberate that she did not show up or turn up in the House last week to answer the question, but that she had an engagement with the African Union, and already African Union had committed resources to her trip. So at the time that the call came that she has to come to Parliament and answer the question, she was already on the way out of the country, reason for her absence, and she assured the whole House, including the Speaker, that going forward, she would never absent herself from the House. And even if she does, of course, there will be an official communication from her ministry to the clerk's office indicating that she wouldn't be available, and perhaps her deputy might even come in her stead to answer questions on the floor. So this is what has been happening in Parliament today.
So to be clear, the Fisheries Minister did not end up answering those questions?
No, so she she turned out, finally she answered those questions and rendered the apology, as I mentioned, and explained that because she was out of the country, that was why she was unable to appear before the House to answer the question that the MPs had filed.
But now she's answered them. What were some of the questions that the MPs had for her?
Okay, so Kojo, the MPs, and I want to be specific, Honorable Frank Ano Dompre wanted to know what steps are being taken to implement the ultimately ensure that we have a waiver of tax on aquaculture input materials as a boost to the industry. And the minister indicated that financing has been received under the China Development Bank loan facility for some construction of landing sites, which will start somewhere in December. So these were the answers that the minister gave.
Kwesi Parker Wilson, corresponding there from Parliament. Thank you so much for that. Now, some railway workers are raising concerns about government's approach towards reviving the railway sector. They believe the coaches are not arriving fast enough on the tracks, which they maintain is a sign of a healthy sector. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta, during the 2018 budget presentation, said the sector will witness signs of revival this year. Not all players in the sector are impressed so far, despite the Railway Development Authority insisting it is on course. Here are some excerpts of the latest JoyNews documentary titled Rusty Rails, in which competition between rail and roads for limited resources comes up strongly as a reason for the state of affairs.
This competition, some allege, had government backing, and came as no surprise to them that the sector slowly crashed and became non-existent at some point.
I think the investment in rail, it's a bit higher compared to road. And obviously, because we already had road transport, the infrastructure was already in place. I guess it was a lot easier for governments to, as it were, follow the status quo, as opposed to that ambitious plan of trying to, as it were, diversify and bring other modes, especially in rail.
While cost of rail is generally perceived to be high, it is believed to last longer and has the capacity to withstand pressure of heavy loads, something roads easily deteriorate when subjected to. The pledge to revamp Ghana's rail sector is not new. Governments have, since the inception of the Fourth Republic, have at different points pledged to invest millions, but often exit leaving things worse than they actually found it. Second-D Member of Parliament Joe Gatti, during his parliamentary vetting as Minister for Railways Development, gave an elaborate analysis of following through with a master plan that will see large cities connected, resulting in an economic boom.
If we believe the research, which I do believe, because there's physical evidence, what will happen in Ghana if we agree to expand the railway is an economic explosion. What we are thinking about the transformation of the economy, can only happen, or will happen the fastest, if we invest in the railway.
Not all persons who have worked and studied the sector are convinced.
There is a gap between rhetorics and action. It is one thing saying it, and it's another thing making sure that it is done. You see, he is trying, but it is not enough. I like the way he has come to reshape maybe the workshop, the training school, and a whole lot of things. But the railway's core business is to run trains, and therefore it must be fixed. The track should be fixed for us to work. The staffs or the workforce that are in railway are also trying to do the work. Had it not been the ingenuity of the workers, the railway as it is wouldn't have stand up to now.
Now, the documentary will air once again on the JoyNews channel at 6:30 p.m. today. The government says it is working in collaboration with neighboring countries to prevent entry of terrorists into Ghana. That is Interior Minister Ambrose Derry's position when he spoke to Joy News at the presentation of a documentary on the state of Ghana's borders. Now, for a whole month, Joy News correspondents were deployed to monitor the situation at Ghana's entry points across the country, culminating in a documentary which was presented to the ministry today. The head of Joy News' security desk, Gifty Ando-Apia, joins me now in the studio to highlight some of these outcomes. Gifty, how good to see you.
Good to see you, Kojo. Actually interesting to find you here at this time.
Isn't it just, yes. Now, we'll get to the visit to the minister in a moment, but perhaps we should get a bit of a reminder of what exactly Porous Borders uncovered.
Okay, so first of all, Porous Borders, we started that project especially because of what happened in Burkina Faso, and also when a Burkinabe was found in Ghana with a loaded pistol. Then it brought the story home that the threat is really coming closer. What are some of the things that we found? In the Upper West region, for example, one key thing we found was that about 100 communities that were in that place, so only 2 that had border posts, which means for all the others, it's free entry for anybody who lives in Burkina Faso, because Upper West is very close to Burkina Faso. So it means that for the 88 others, or 98 others, it's free entry. So that's quite alarming. If you take Upper East, there was a key issue about lack of demarcation between Ghana, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Togo, and Burkina Faso. So the people there usually have conflicts about who owns this part of the land, because there's an area that's a no man's land, but it's not clear who owns which part. So the people there were, scared that it could actually bring up a full-blown conflict. If you take the Savannah region, for example, there was a lot of smuggling going on, and there's smuggling across the board. If you look at it, there's smuggling all over the place. There are so many unapproved routes in this area. So you found in the Bono region that there's some vigilance there, but people still get their way. People also accuse border officials of extortion and bribery. So these are some of the things that we found. Terrible living and working conditions for the men who man our borders as well.
Now, we got some feedback once we put this out. Tell us about that.
So I would say that just even whilst we're still airing the series, the minister, the Interior Minister, and the Controller General of Immigration, they were on the ground, going around for themselves, trying to ascertain for themselves what really the problems are. We had the Ministry of Information speak about it and spoke about how much has been allocated to dealing especially with border security. We had the Deputy Interior Minister speak about it. What we are told by the immigration boss and other people in authority is that they procured some extra vehicles for the men at the borders. They procured some motorbikes, especially for those in areas that are very hard to reach. We're also told that there's a lot of work being done to improve their living and working conditions. But the problem is huge, Kojo, and that's the point I need to make. Perhaps these modest steps that are being taken will lead to bigger steps, because the problem is huge, and it won't be solved by the purchase of a few vehicles. It won't be solved by the purchase of a few motorbikes. It is a big problem, and we're told by the minister yesterday when we visited that there is some work in progress. He was hesitant to give us the details, but he says to look out for that work in progress.
In fact, let's talk a bit more about your visit to the Interior Minister. You went to present the documentary to him. What were his reactions?
So essentially what we did was to bring the story to him, just in case you didn't see it on TV, just in case you didn't hear it on radio. Here it is, right here in front of you. But also, it's more of nation building for us, because security, when it comes to security, it's not like your usual politics. Security is very delicate, and so we, as a desk, we considered that it would be good for us to bring what we have found to the attention of the authorities firsthand. So we presented it to them so that they can take some action, specific actions, especially on the specific problems that we found. It was a good meeting, I will say. He was very open, he was very happy that we came, and he actually indicated that what we have done is going to help them tailor their interventions. Okay, so you go down there, you find your own problems, but when the journalists go and they also pick up, and we went to we went across the country, everywhere that there's a border. Except we couldn't go to all the borders because it's huge, so we couldn't go. But I think that we had about 15 or 17 reports that highlighted each of the problems in each of the regions that we visited. So essentially, it's to help them direct their focus as far as the interventions to make our borders safe is concerned.
Like you said, nation building. Kudos to the security desk for that wonderful piece of work. Thank you so much for coming through, Gifty and up here there.